Okay, so B'siyata D'Shmaya, we're going to jump back into our learning about Ezras Hashem Yisbarach, continuing our study of Ana B'Koyach. This is the fourth shiur in Ana B'Koyach. We're taking it stanza by stanza, line at a time, and getting into really the incredible aymek, the incredible depth that there is in every word, and every inflection, and every nuance, and every Rosh Tevis of this incredible tefillah by Reb Nechoni ben Akana Schusay Yagen Aleinu, with a focus as to why we're dafka saying this tefillah in Kabbalah Shabbos. We say it in Karbanis as well in the morning. We also say it before L'Chadaydi. What's the depth of that? Why is it instituted dafka to be said at that time? And we've been exploring the incredible aymek of every line and every word. And so, Bez Hashem, this particular shiur is sponsored La'atzlacha Rabba and Brias, good health for Yitzchak ben Dina Yuta, Shoshana Malka Bas Yechaved Rivka. Bez Hashem should have all kinds of bracha, mazal and atzlacha in their lives. Bez Hashem. So let's jump into the third stanza. No gibar Dorshei Yechudcha kvav Hashamrim. Like I mentioned last week, I had a very difficult avoida of having to select, really, from among, you may have 30 pages on this. And so I tried to take out, there was a lot that I had to leave out, and it's unfortunate. I really encourage everybody to get the Sefer if you can, to learn it properly from Rav Reuven Sasson that we've been learning from. And there's still, even though I managed to cut out a lot, there's still a lot here. And so with Hashem's help, we're going to try as much as we can to go as quickly as we can, but it's deep and it's nuanced, and b'siyata d'shmaya. Need a lot of Godspeed, as they say, to the crew for this one. Okay. So, on a simple level, na gibar darshi yechudcha kvav hashamreim, like we translated in our first introductory shiur to Ana B'Koyach, we're saying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, na gibar, please, gibar, powerful one, darshei yechudcha kevavas shamreim, which means those that are seeking your unity, darshei yechudcha, we're going to learn about what that means, kevavas, like the pupil of an eye, shamreim, guard them. And this, as we're going to see, is rooted in Pesukim and Navi that refer to something that needs to be guarded as the eye, for the simple level that in our human physiology, HaKadosh Baruch Hu built in that there's this teva. It's an amazing thing. We have a part of our body that has another built-in part of the body, a hood, that's meant, hey, great to see you, thanks for coming. That's meant, there are Marmakam Yishitz here, that are meant to go down and cover it and be lifted back up. And so metaphorically, we're saying, Rabbana Shalom, guard us. Guard us like the pupil, the eyeball is guarded by the eyelid that goes down over it. So Rav Kook says, Knesset Yisrael dereshes ki yichud Hashem ba'olam. He says, Am Yisrael's whole tafkid in the world is to seek the oneness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the world, and to believe that nothing happens in this world disconnected from everything else. There's one author of this story, so there's no detail that's not part of the plot. Not multiple, chas v'shalom, multiple authors. There's one author. And if there's one author, then everything that comes out of his pen, so to speak, or out of the keyboard that he's kiviyachol typing on, whatever, it's from him. That means that everything is unified, everything is connected, everything is one. Not just that there's one Hashem. That's one understanding of what Yichud Hashem Yishma Yisrael, Hashem Lekeinu Hashem Echad. On a simple level means there's only one creator and there's not multiple creators. It's good. But we're saying that it means something much deeper than that. Not just that there's only one Hashem, but that there's only one anything. There's only one anything. Because in as much as everything is literally brought into being by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Hashem is one, so Memela, there's a Yichud, there's a oneness in everything as well. It's a different layer. It's a different level of understanding. So Knesset Yisrael, the collective Jewish soul, Am Yisrael as a whole, is sent down to this world and journeyed throughout history from Har Sinai on for the purpose of Dereshes Yichud Hashem ba'olam, to seek to live a life of awareness of the unity in the world. Liyachi kol habruim sheyasu kulam aguda echas, and to work toward an ultimate eventuality where the whole of humanity is bound together for one purpose. Aguda achas means in one binding, like eged on a lulav. Lasis ritzayin chabalev of shalim, like we say, lashon and tefillah, to do HaKadosh Baruch Hu's will with whole hearts, one hearts, not different energies inside of us. That itself is the opposite of the Yichud of Hashem. Whole, full, one, complete. Ubishvil harayon zeh, says Rav Kook, because we have this idea, hamifa'am tamid belibam shel Yisrael, that's constantly pulsating within our collective heart. This is what we want from the world. We want to see all of humanity unified under our collective source as children from one Father, so that all of humanity can stop looking at the differences. We can start to look at the essential sameness, that all of us are created b'tzelem Elokim, and that each of us have a mission, have a purpose, and that the Beis HaMikdash is supposed to be a house of prayer, a house of tefillah, not just for the Jewish nation, but kibesi beis tefillah yikare l'chol ha'amim. And the whole Rosh Hashanah, the whole tefillah, we're busy saying psukim like this: V'yedu kol pa'ol ki ata pa'alta v'yavin kol yitzur. We daven that, not just that we should, it'd be nice enough, forget about Am Yisrael, if I could. Yeah, like, we just talk about the individual, but we talk about all of humanity. And Aleinu l'shabeach, every single day, 3 times a day, we're reminding ourselves of the broadest mission that we have possible, which is V'yed kal basar. What's the beginning of it? All of these terminologies that we're using is pointing to this ultimate reality. So because of this, ubishvil harayon hazeh, because of this feeling, this thought, this motivation, this ambition, hamif'am tamid belibam shel Yisrael, which is all the time pulsing in our hearts. So he says, Rabim kamim alehem. This causes a lot of hatred upon Am Yisrael, a lot of fear. Because essentially what we're calling for is that other people should stop running after shtusim and should start connecting to a much bigger, broader way of looking at what's possible for the human race. And therefore, tzricham im shmir mikol tzad, and that's ultimately why Am Yisrael needs so much shmira. Ugvura gedayla tzricha l'shmir zu, and it has to be done with tremendous force, tremendous power to guard Am Yisrael. When we go out on this mission, not to just tuck ourselves into some corner of the earth and just keep our head down, we're meant to conquer the world. In today's Gimel Tammuz, the Yartzeit of Lubavitcher Rebbe, famously, his thing was in Yiddish to keravelt, right? Famously, keravelt heint means turn over the world, to conquer the world. This is mamash what we should do, not to play defense all the time. Play offense. We have what it takes to mamash bring the world to Hashem. And he says that could be the cause of some unpleasantness. Yeah.
Do we understand the word gibor here to just mean strength in the more the simple way, whatever, or connect to what we were saying last week about gibora, as in the withholding strength specifically?
It seems from what Rav Kook is saying, ugvura gedola tzricha l'shmir zu, it sounds like it's talking about like a forceful guarding, like a person closes their eyes tight shut so that nothing gets in. That's like using the metaphor of kvav hashamrim, the eyelid. That's what I'd say, but it's all connected, And Gibar, of course, in this context, even though we're going to learn, we really need 2 hours for this, but we're going to learn. I'm going to try my best, but we're going to learn that this stanza is Keneged Tiferes, is Keneged Yaakov Avinu, which we're going to get into right away. Remember that we learned that the whole Anabakoyach is the energy of Gvura, right? The whole Shem Membeis is the Shem, Rosh Tevis Maaseh Bereishis, the energy of constriction, limitation. And so we're channeling that here, even though it's not a stanza of Gvura. Last week was the stanza of Gvura, was Yitzchak, Nagibar, channeling the energy of Anabakoyach. Dorshei Yechudcha Am Yisrael, when they seek out your Achdus, so then they need Kaval HaShamrim, they need to be guarded. They need to be guarded. So the question becomes, okay, that's on a simple level we understand, right? Very basically, why, when we say Dorshei Yechudcha, do we then talk about protection? And the answer is because this is why we need protection. Because if we're doing our thing, there's going to be those that aren't so keen on, just dropping their, interests. Even forget about other religions. This talks culturally. It's very hard for people to stop doing, even Yidden Nebuch that don't know, what it means Shabbos. It's very difficult to help someone change their lifestyle. There's tremendous oppositional force to that. And that could be the cause of just, we'd rather eradicate what Hitler, Yamach Shemai, called the conscience of humanity, right? Which he believed that the Jews were the conscience of humanity, and was driving him crazy because it's so much, quote unquote, easier to just shut that voice away. And so when we are doing our job as Dorshei Yechudcha, we're shaking the world, So then, Rebbeinu Shalom, we need shmira for that. Kavav Hashamrim. That's what it means on a simple level. But let's take a much deeper dive into the connection between Achdus. Hey, great to see you. Thanks for coming. Achdus and the I. And let's take a look at this paragraph here. He says like this. On Urayim we see Shebein Anoshim Yirei Shemayim Be'emes. You see two tzaddikim, you see two Talmidei Chachamim. Yira Tahira Ubara. He says those that are on fire, gesund und stark, with Yira Tahira Ubara, with a clear and a really pure Yira Shemayim Be'emes. Yesh Ava Amitis V'chibur Pnimi Nifla. You saw Rabbi Yashiv get together with Rav Chaim Kanievsky's Chusim Yagdalein. The love, the Ava, it's not like anything else in the world. And you'd think, there's competition in some sense. I mean, sometimes Rabbi Yashiv could not have the same opinion as Rav Shlomo Zalman or others. Even, because this is the Mar D'Shmaitz, so we're talking about Rav Kook. Famously, Rav who was it? Rav Zalman Meltzer? Rav Yosef Chaim. Rav Yosef Chaim Sonnenfeld, Kiyadua was Bar Plukta with Rav Kook. But that was ideologically, when they got together in person, which they often did, tremendous ava, tremendous love between them. And you see that. Yesh ava amitis, there's a true love, the chibur pnimi nifla, and there's a wondrous inner connection. Shenevea mikoyach, where does that come from? He says that comes from hashutfis ha'amukak shalahem b'kiddush shem Hashem ba'olam. So beautiful. He says they're mamish partners. They're ultimately partners. Each one is playing his part. But when they get together, there are no partners in the world that are as deep partners in mamish keeping the world going and bringing energy down to the world and bringing the world toward its tikkun and fulfilling the purpose of creation. V'chule, it's like the strongest thing you could do. As gedolim that get together, like mamish, a partnership on the most amazing level. Matara shemechabera sumekasheres oisem b'chol havayosem. Their whole existence is bound up one with the other. Two Talmidei Chachamim living two sides of the world. They never met each other. When they sit together in person, they're flying to the same place. They sit next to each other on the plane. Immediately, there's a sense of ava that's unparalleled. Says Rav Sasson, he says, "Kain tzarich liyos ba'olam kulai." This is possible to be felt not just by gedolim and not even just by two yidin halavai, but he says by every single human being that you pass by in the train station, halavai. That all of humanity should be activated their consciousness to be able to discover the simplest truths that you and I live with, to understand that there's more to life than our own ambitions, and that we can work together as humanity to channel a spirit of awareness down to the world. Imagine the spirit of love, the spirit of partnership. This is possible. He says this, that everybody could be connected to that awesome light, this eternal light. That would bring incredible blessing to all of humanity. Where all of us can get together around the Torah, around revelation, around truth, around morals, around emes, the Malchus of Hashem, Ukfoidai, and His presence, V'asiyas Ritzaynai, and doing our best to live in alignment with the way that He envisioned what humanity should look like. This is what we say b'tfilas Rosh Hashanah. V'ya'asu kulam. What we're davening for is that ultimately v'ya'asu kulam, all of them should get together and create aguda achas, one gathering together, one group. Lasis ritzayin chabalev of shalom Rebbeinu Shalom, to do Your will with one heart. Zum malas achdas Hashem hamavia bracha la'adam kulai. This is the achdas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we seek to bring about in talking about Hashem's oneness and the oneness of the world, and channeling that through all the ways that we know how to channel that, through Torah and mitzvahs and concepts and Yiddishkeit, etc. We're be'etzem also trying to bring the oneness of humanity. To remind everybody that we're mamish brothers. We're all one. We're all partners. Zum malas achdas Hashem hamavia bracha la'olam kulai hi oira shel olam, and this is the light of the world. Mamish kemoi ha'einayim barosh. Just like the eyes in the head of a person, shemi'iros loy es haderech. The person's ability to see, ki'ilu, kiviyachol, lights the way before him. Just like if it was pitch black at night and all of a sudden you discover a street lamp and you plug it in, now you can see where you're going. That's essentially what the eyes do for us all the time. Chas v'shalom, if a person can't see, it's always black. That terminology, the ma'or einayim of a person, the light of a person's eyes, the eyes hint to clarity, the ability to move forward, the ability to see, the ability to look toward a futuristic model of how things might look when things move toward tikkun. But to move toward, you need to have eyes. That's what the eyes help us do. And that's why we refer to the tzaddikim as the einei ha'eda, right? The eyes of the people. Why? Why the eyes? Because in the same way that the eyes lead a person along, and they help a person to figure out, where should I go? How should I go? How should I walk? That's what the tzaddikim do. There are eyes. They shine the path. So he says this is what the eyes are. Mamish kamo yeinayim b'rosh ha'adam, just like the eyes in the head of a person, shemi'iris leis haderech u'mechuvenes oisa li'ad hanachon, and they help bring the person to the proper destination, b'yachas me'uzan u'muduyak, in an exact way. L'chol ma sheyesh b'svizasa leval yipaga b'anosham acherim, not to bump into other people. That's what the eyes help us do. They help us avoid all the obstacles, and they help us get to where we need to get to. The opposite of that is this lashon ki ivar hamemashmesh ba'afela, right? Like a blind person that stumbles what? In darkness. What do you mean a blind person who stumbles in darkness? It doesn't have to be dark for a blind person to stumble. He stumbles during the day. But the answer is that for him it's dark. For him it's dark. Being blind is be'etzem darkness. That means that seeing is be'etzem light. Light, right? Be'etzem light. He says that's what we're trying to do with our eyes. That's what we're trying to do. Am Yisrael are meant to be the eyes of the world. The eyes of the world we're meant to be. Which means we're the ones that are looking forward to say, okay, it'll be the job of the nations of the world to figure out our present reality. Rav Hutner has a very beautiful piece on this in his Drashas Techanic. I believe it's Ois Tes. Very, very beautiful. He says it's the job of the nations of the world to maintain reality as it is right now, to work within the reality of just current financial situations and social philosophy and the sciences and advancements and so on and so forth within the current world order. He says Am Yisrael are working to change the world order, to move things into a new phase of existence. That's our thing. That's Torah and mitzvahs. We're not sufficing with the way that things are currently. The Jewish people have contributed enormously to advance, so to speak, the physical, practical world. And Baruch Hashem, we have a chelik of that also. But our vision is a vision of Shabbos, not a vision of the 6 days of the week. Our vision is a vision of Kilu Kol Malachtacha Asuya, when it's a whole different realm, a whole different way of being, legamre. And so, just the same way that it is for an individual, we have two choices. We can spend all of our lives focusing on the reality of being alive, which is just practical things. You need a place to live. You need food on your table. You need to figure out how to spend your time. There are practical things that you need in clothing to wear, and just all the peripheral elements of life. And then there's another focus, which is, why should I spend all my time focusing on the elements that are peripheral to the experience of being alive if I could focus on why I'm alive in the first place? Why am I alive? So 99.9% of the world occupies most of their time, if not all of their time, focusing on just the facts of life. But the fact that there are facts of life in the first place, haloi davarhu, isn't that a fact that's worth thinking about? What is this consciousness? What is this to be a soul in a body that now needs to do A, B, C, or D? But why? What for? So in the same sense, the nations of the world focus on the quote-unquote life, for the most part. Am Yisrael's job is to focus on the tachlis hachayim, the purpose of the world, to bring that to the world, to infuse, so to speak, the 6 days of the week, the nations of the world, with the spirit of Shabbos Kodesh, which is, as we've been learning, the spirit of Emunah, which is the spirit of oneness. The spirit of oneness, that's the ultimate goal. So he says that's the connection between Am Yisrael and eyes. This element of eyes that we're talking about, to be able to see, to be able to look forward, to be able to understand that we mean to guide the world along the path of history. We mean to move the reality as it stands now into a new phase. Says Rav Reuven Sasson, we cannot mention Dorshei Yechudcha without conjuring the concept of an eye. For that reason, and I think it's a simple reason. Dorshei Yechudcha, what does that mean? That means that you must be looking toward a future vision. That's what it means to be Doresh Yechudcha, a vision where all of humanity can literally get together, as they are, each of them playing their own role. A vision of the unity of all of existence, in the spiritual realm, in the physical realm, literally folded into Yudke Vavke, V'chule V'chule. That's sight, what we would call, in metaphoric parlance, we'd call it vision. Vision. That's what it means to be a Jew. We have vision. That's one level. Al kein meshuli hi ha'achdus koyach ha'klalius l'koyach ha'ayin. Says this is why the concept of oneness, of unity, not just the unity of Hashem vis-a-vis chas v'shalom other gods, that's a very simple understanding of the oneness of God. The oneness of God, it means the oneness of creation. It means the oneness of everything in my life. It means the oneness in everything in all of your lives. Every situation, circumstance, master plan, not one thing is out of place. Not one thing ever is out of place. From the standpoint of the present moment, everything is exactly the way that it needs to be. My bechira now is to choose to take the next step in the right way. Everything is part of his story. We call it history. His story. It's all his story that he's telling. David HaMelech sings also this pasuk in Tehillim Eloi Amos ki echya. David says, I don't want to die. Ki echya, I want to live. What does it mean to live? Says David HaMelech va'asaper maseka. I will tell your story. Not I'm going to tell some story about Hashem to someone else. In the very fact of my living, I'm telling a story. In the very fact of my living, it's Hashem's story. And in this book, he has many different chapters. And maybe our names are just chapter headings. Everything about us and all of our experiences and all of our challenges. And it's mamash a story that's being lived and unfolded through us moment to moment with this complex interaction with our own bechira. That's on one level, but now he speaks maybe much deeper. Without getting into the whole depth of it now, we've spoken about this in previous shiur, and we can't every time give the whole hakdama. But basically, very basically, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, he created the world with a system we've talked about called 10 sephiros, right? Or 10 midos, 10 different traits, 10 steps in a creative process. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is echad yachad miyuchad. His creative energy is absolutely one. And like light reflects off a prism, and the prism is a tool that reveals what is be'etzem potentially in the light, so too HaKadosh Baruch Hu created 10 kelim, which each reflect different facets of his unity, or allow us to understand the way that he unfolded creation step after step, much like we would engage in creating something, building a building, painting a piece of artwork. Step after step. We talked about a fundamental distinction between the first 3 steps and the following 7 steps. The first 3, without getting into names now, complicating ourselves, but just for the purpose of this learning, Keser, Chachma, and Bina, which are steps 1, 2, and 3. Keser means crown, that hints to the will of Hashem to create. Chachma means intellect. We'll talk about what it means in a second. Bina means understanding. And those are the first 3. And much like in a person's own Tselem Elokim, which is called our bodies, the thinking part of us is totally hidden, totally concealed. Can't see what I'm thinking. I can't see what you're thinking. Hidden, completely hidden. So too in Hashem's creating the world, that level of Hashem, like thinking about what he wanted to create, kiviyachol, so to speak, that's the hidden spiritual realms beyond. We're going to learn about that now. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu starts to unfold practical creation that we can see. And those are the lower 7 midos. Some of them have names that we're familiar with, without getting into the whole thing now. Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malchus. And this is connected to the 7 days of the week, and this is connected to all the patterns of 7 that we find in our physical world that we can see, we can experience, and apprehend. If we all have one brain, and that brain is the result of us being created b'tselem Elokim, and just like we think, what does it mean we think? Because somehow Hashem thinks, kiviyachal, whatever this means. Why are there 2 brains? Why is there Chachma and Bina? And the answer is that these 2 brains, so to speak, are not 2 completely different things. They're 2 kinds of thinking. And they work together. They have to work together. So Chachma, which we're going to learn about, is the big picture. The big picture. It's the idea that comes into a person's head when they are the outset of a project, especially artistic people, creative people, in any discipline, the arts or the sciences, or in Torah. A person has a dream to write a sefer. That's Chachma. Wow, a whole sefer. You think about what the topic is. You think, generally speaking, about what you want to cover in the sefer. That's called Chachma. That's the first big, what we call big picture. Or like we mentioned before, and you see where this is going, vision. Because it's all-encompassing. It's the whole thing. Bina is the details. So now I want to write a sefer. Well, I have to be practical. Practical. How much time is it going to take? What do I need? What svarim am I going to need to go through first to distill the information? How do I want it to be arranged? Do I want it to be in Hebrew and English? V'chule, v'chule. This is called Bina. That's the details. Chachma and Bina, and they interact. They interact one with the other. Again, without going into each prat now, just on a Chachma level, Chachma is connected. Let's start with Bina. Bina is connected to hearing. And the reason for this, very simply, is because if Bina is the cognitive process, the kind of thinking that's detail by detail by detail by detail, then that would make it connected to the ears, which can only hear one thing at a time. One thing at a time. Can't hear 2 people talking over each other, talking past each other. It doesn't work. Each thing has to be on its own. Trei koili lo mishtamai. 2 things you can't hear at the same time. Chachma, though, is connected to what? Is connected to vision. Connected to re'iyah, to seeing. Why? Because if a person stands back, they see everything. Everything. They see the big picture, right? That's the concept of Chachma. And we have sources in Chazal for this. We say every morning, V'seim b'libeinu, Bina, lahavin, lahaskil, l'shmoya. Bina is connected to hearing. Chachma is a whole different thing. Shkach, thank you. Chachma is a whole different thing. Ezehu chacham haroya es hanoilad. Chachma is connected to seeing. Seeing and hearing. Now let's go back inside.
Halom Adam is also big.
Beautiful.
Right.
They're very connected to that also. Mikol Adam. Absolutely. And Haroya es Hanoilad is exactly the kind of vision we were talking about, to see what is going to happen, right? That's what it means. To see the future, to see down the line. Okay, so he says, Al-Kain, let's go back inside. Al-Kain b'shuli hiya achdus koach ha'klalis l'kol ha'ayin. It's connected to the eyes. She'soid ha're'iyah, which is the concept of seeing. V'soid ha'chachma. And it's the secret mystery of this concept of Chachma, big picture thinking, the whole project, seeing, standing back, taking everything in. Shemimena ba ha'achdus v'achibur shel hakol. And if you think about it very deeply, I wish we had the time properly to mamish go through things properly. Limited. If you think about it more abstractly, if Keser and Chachma are the first 2 steps of the creative process, then whatever is going to unfold from them later on in the creative process, in the later steps, like the 7 days of the week, especially as you get further and further and further, like to the very end, which is Malchus, in the higher realms, as the root of the tree, as the root of all the branches and all the leaves and everything that's going to grow and sprout out from it, it's because they're connected to one essential root that all of these leaves have a shaykhus one with the other. Right? Because otherwise, if I didn't know about the roots, then I look at a tree and I see 2,000 leaves, and okay, saying like, what shaykhus? And it's not enough just to tell me, well, listen, look past the leaves and see there are branches. Shkach, there are branches, and those little branches are connected to bigger branches. Those bigger branches are connected to the trunk of the tree. It's true. But that doesn't tell me something essential about the connectivity between one leaf and another. But if I tell you that they all came from the same seed, mamish, that they all came from the same seed, then they're fundamentally bound together. They're coded together. They're absolutely intertwined one with the other. So when I want to talk about the unity of a creation that is the result of 7 days of creation all the way down until the last day where everything is unfolded, everything is created, and I want to talk about the unity of that thing, so where do I point to? I point to Chachma. I point to those realms of Keser and really Chachma, because Keser is called Ayin. It's just the will of Hashem. It's even beyond thinking about anything. It's just, so we talk about Chachma. So he says that, go back inside, he says this is the side, the mystery of what we say every morning, Kulam bechachma asisa. If I want to know Kulam, I want to have a tfisas ayin, I want to have a perspective on the world that sees everything as Kulam, as one, so then I need to realize that bechachma asisa, that everything that was created, everything around me is rooted where? Bechachma asisa. Memela Kulam, which is the site of Re'iyah, Ezu Chacham Haroya. Ubir in Miksara, he says very basically to understand this. We know that the world was created step after step after step. Mirum Milas Ein Sof, from the apex, the pinnacle of infinity, which is Hashem. Al Matzias appeared Vahariba, until our experience of this chair being here and that chair being there. Just our experience within a limited world of 6 directions. We talked about Aleph Beis Gimel. Uberashis Brias Ha'olamos, in the earliest dawn of the creation, Hayu Klulam Ba'achtas Atsuma, everything was just collected into one tiny drop, to a spark, to a Gesundheit. With no distinction, no multiplicity, no disparity, no disconnection. Mamish like a seed. Tipas Hazara. Shabbat Kadol Havlad Kulai, Benekudas Achdusis, just the whole fetus and all the development of the person is all wrapped up into his DNA. Terem Shenimchetu Evara Venifretu Kachaisa, before the child starts to develop in the womb, it's just everything's included just in a tiny, tiny one whole organism. Kach, the same thing. Bereshis Hayetzira, in the beginning of the creation, the formation of the world, Haya'adamas Kulam, Kulam Nekuda Achdusis Atzmis, so to speak, in a divine seed, Kiviyachal. Everything is in one Nekuda, one kernel. Kulam, in that place of Bechachma Asisa. He Nekudas HaKodesh, that's just the kernel of holiness. Reshis Hayesh, the earliest dawn of anything being created. Hami'ir mebechinas ha'chachma, which shines forth from this place of chachma. Hamashul la'av, which is always connected to the concept of a father, without getting into all this now. And when everything is seen through the prism, where I'm not looking at the leaf of a tree, or even at the leaves, but I'm looking at the tree and I'm chapping that there's a seed here that everything sprouted from. See, it's like Ki'ilu, we're looking at all the leaves when they're still absolutely unified in the seed. It's like looking at a person's child and seeing Kiviyachal, how they were once included within the physiology of the father. It's like looking at anything and understanding that in some sense it's still bound up with its shirish in the deepest way possible. Without any period. We might have to split this into 2 shiurim, which is possible. Not ideal, but definitely possible. Okay, Al Kain. Therefore, B'shashan uroitzim lavatias madrigas Yisrael she'im heim Dorshei yichud Hashem ba'olam. When we want to talk about Am Yisrael on this mission, revealing the unity of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the world, revealing the unity of the world seen as extensions of Him, so to speak. So Hine ma'alasam hi b'bechinas ha'ayin. We got to talk about the eye, the koyach ha're'iyah, the bechina, the aspect of chachma, which is connected to sight. She koyach ha'achdus ba'ilom ha'ayin elokis, this divine vision, which looks at the world with vision, taking everything in, meaning to say, even though we might look at each thing one at a time, because Sachako, we don't have eyes in the back of our heads, and we're only ever positioned one place where we are. We can't literally take the whole of existence in at once, but it means that wherever we look past the facade of this thing as being an independent thing, and we find the shiur, wherein everything else in the world shares that same shiur. We see the shiur hayesh within everything that we look at. That's called emunah. It's a whole different thing. Not just emunah that there's a God that created the world and He's one God and there aren't other gods. It's that wherever a Jew looks, he sees the pulsating energy of the Creator deep inside of it, being aware of that. And the whole world comes together like the Mishkan, which is exactly what this world is supposed to be. A Mishkan. A dira b'tachtoin. Like the pasuk says, V'haya Mishkan echad. All the different pieces, they put them together, they put it up. One Mishkan. V'haya ha-Mishkan echad. Al Kain, therefore, when we talk about the achdus of Am Yisrael and what we're trying to do in the world, we say HaKadosh Baruch Hu, okay, so once we're connecting to the koyach of the eye, so you built in a mechanism around the eye. And now we're understanding physiologically why we are built with eyelids. Because there's nothing that needs more protection than this koyach of oneness. It's unbelievably deep. Unbelievably deep. There's nothing that needs more protection in the body than the eyes. That needs to be cleaned as frequently. All of us are doing it right now. Don't be conscious of it, but you're blinking all the time. All the time you're blinking. Right? Why? Because subliminally, spiritually, at the spiritual root, at the shiur for what eyes are, there's nothing that the Yetzer Hara wants to battle against in one form or another than a Jew maintaining this deeper perspective on life. Memela, we have eyelids. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we need protection. This needs to be protected. And I ask you, is it for nothing that dafka every day when we're proclaiming our mission statement, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, are we covering our eyes? So there are a few reasons why we cover our eyes. The more simple reason that we're covering our eyes is because sometimes in order to mamish have faith that in Hashem's oneness and unity, we have to look away from the physical world and understand that there's a deeper reality, and that's true on one level. But based on what we're saying, it's gevaldik in a whole different level. It's a whole different kavanah to have, right? Whole different kavanah to have when we cover our eyes, because we say, Rabbana Shalom, this is very, very important to say, and we're going to end here because I'm going to have to do another shiur next week on this. We're saying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this is what the Yetzer Hara is after. In all of his different ways that the Yetzer Hara comes to attack me and to pressure me and to push me it's this that he wants to prevent me from holding on to, is the perspective that Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Elokeinu is Elikim, is Gematria HaTeva, is nature. Hashem Elokeinu. It's I can look beyond the facade of Teva, I can find Yud Kei Vav Kei there. So when a Jew is about to connect with this mission, with this perspective, so we're recognizing that we need so much shmirah. We need so much shmirah when we're trying to live this way. And that's maybe why we're covering our eyes. It's not enough just, to have the eyelids in that sense. You can't just close. It's like mamish nagibar, maybe. It's that concept of gevura. Gevura is always in the yadayim, right? to like extra protect. To extra protect. Let's finish this paragraph. Kivavas, kemoi bebas einoi, like the pupil of an eye. Ki Dorshei Yechudcha heim. Rebbeinu Shalom, why are we asking you to guard us like the pupil of an eye? Because we just made reference to the fact that we are Dorshei Yechudcha. And the yichud of the world is in the chachma of the world. And chachma is connected to the eyes. And the eyes is connected to vision. And we're trying to point all of humanity toward an eventual perspective where all of us can be brothers and sisters. Where all of us can mamish join together as partners, no less. Like we said, then Rav Eliashiv sitting with Rav Shlomo Zalman. Every human being can feel that kinship, can feel that brotherhood, can feel that partnership, mamish partnership. Dorshei Yechudcha. So then, we're connecting now to the bechina of the ayin, to the aspect of the eye, of vision, of unity. So then guard us. There's no guarding like that aspect of the eyelids, which so effortlessly come down over the eyes. That's their whole tafkid, is just to cover the eyes. Harisa ma'afapayim v'chol ha'instinctim ha'nefloim shenivru l'shmir ala ayim shedegmasam aloy metzinu b'shum ever ba'adam. All the details, the technical elements of how Kadosh Baruch Hu created perfectly that our eyes should have this built-in mechanism. We don't even think about it. It's effortless. Imagine if it took effort to blink. We'd spend the whole day just because you have to do it so many times. We don't even think about it. Someone will look it up afterwards. How many times you blink in a day? Thousands, tens of thousands. I don't know. Probably thousands. Eliezer's already on it, right? Thousands of times, tens of thousands of times. Unbelievable. V'alkein, therefore, Yi Hashem Elokeinu, and he says this dafka, Hashem Elokeinu, Shemreinu kevavas einai. Let HaKadosh Baruch Hu guard us like the pupil of an eye. Ki zeh ma she'anu be'emes, because that's exactly what we are. And here, he quotes a pasuk, how many?
900 to 1,200 times an hour.
An hour!
Yeah. 19,000 times a day.
There you go. Can you imagine that? 19,000 times we're blinking. It's unbelievable. Hashem created the body. It's just wild. So here he says that this is pshat in a pasuk from Zechariah. It's mamish so beautiful. It's so mavur. Look, it's literally everything we just said is in this pasuk. Ki koi amar Hashem Tzavakai. So said HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Achar kavod shalchani el hagoyim. After my honor, shalchani el hagoyim, for the purpose of bringing my presence, my glory to the world, I sent you to the goyim. Hashoyledim eschem, that are negating you. Ki hanegea bachem, because whoever will touch you, will impact you, negea bevavas einai, is tampering with the pupil of my eye, says Hashem. So here you have in this context what our mission is, when it is that it's likely that we're going to have negative opposition, both from the outside and, like we said, from the inside. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes reference to He's protecting us in that moment, bevavas einai, with His eyelid, to come and protect that element of vision, that vision of unity, that perspective that looks at the world that has manifested. We live in the world of Asiya, but we recognize kulam. We can see the unity of existence when? B'chachma asisa. When we recognize that everything sprouted from that place where it was completely, indivisibly unified with HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chvaydai uva'atzmai. And of course, to end, let's read the Rav Kook first, and then we'll finish. Just 2 lines. V'kasher al yedei kesher kodesh zeh, goes back to that piece. Through this holy kesher that we're making, we're binding the whole world together. Nases haknisiyah hayisraelis einoi shel olam va'oiroi. We become the eye of the world and its light. This what he calls this beautiful Knisiyah Yisraelis. This gathering together that the Jewish nation caused. Doesn't mean a gathering of Jews. It means this capacity that we have uniquely to bring a message of unity to the whole world. We become the eye and the light of the world. Ad shemi biladai ein erech l'chol hametzias b'chol havayasa. Until without this, there's really no value to the whole reality without this. Because like we said before, you can live your whole life and focus on the facts of life, like once you're alive, but why? Why am I living? That's our place. Al kain anu mevakshim, therefore we say, Rabbanu Shalom, no Gibar, please, Gibar, mighty one, Dorshei Yechudcha, Kivava Shamrim. Guard us like the pupil of your eye, those that are Dorshei Yechudcha. Why might we mention this on Shabbos? Because like we said in previous shiurim, Shabbos represents the very end of creation, when everything is done. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu looks, Kol Malach Asher Asa, everything is finished already. The world is ready. Can you imagine everything is like fresh, new, polished, clean? Like imagine what it was like, fresh, totally fresh. HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mechadesh Betuva B'chol Yom Tamid. It's true, but mamish, fresh, gleaming, glittering, just a natural world, untainted yet by humanity. Beautiful world. But on the other hand, the most dangerous place. Because until that point, it was still a process of development where there's still connection between the creator and the creation. But at this point, it's just creation. And Adam and Chava have the capacity to choose to look away from the creator. But we know very deeply that al pi pnimius, and we sing this in the Chadaydi, Soif Maseh b'machshavat chila. Soif Maseh b'machshavat chila. Paradoxically, in some way there's an even greater connection with the very beginning at the very end than anything in between, because that's all the very beginning was. It was just the plan to bring this into existence. And if we have this perspective, a Shabbostic perspective, on Shabbos we look toward the Chachma, we see mamish, the oneness, the unity of the world. That's the emunah of Shabbos Kodesh. That's where we separate from the 6 days of the week. We connect to our national mission, which is to sit and to be aware of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and to recognize that the creation has a creator and is infused as one with the light of the creator. And that's do this shiur in 2 parts, but that's part 1 to understanding Nagi Bar Darshi Yechudcha Kvav Hashamrim. Just to prep, next week we're going to focus on the Rosh Tevis. I'm telling you, mind-blowing, like not to be believed. Very, very deep. We'll go through slowly and carefully. Okay, Yeshikach. Thank you so much. A good start. A great start.